The great hall of the Asteran Palace was nothing like anything Tom had seen before. The ceiling curved high above, painted with scenes of silver rivers and golden skies. Columns shaped like tall, twisting trees lined the room, their roots carved into the floor and their branches touching the painted clouds. Every step Tom took echoed against the polished stone. The air carried a faint, sweet smell, like flowers that only bloomed under alien moons. He walked forward with his small team behind him, feeling the weight of every pair of eyes watching. At the far end, on a throne made of crystal and metal, sat Queen Lurin. She was tall and graceful, with skin the soft color of pale green leaves and eyes that shone like deep water. Her crown was a simple band of silver, but it seemed to make the air around her brighter. Tom was the only human chosen to speak for Earth in these talks. His mission was simple on paper: build trust, agree on trade, and avoid any mistake that could start trouble. In reality, the situation was fragile. The Asterans had only met humans 2 years ago. They were powerful, proud, and careful with outsiders. One wrong word could undo everything. He stopped in front of the throne and bowed, just as his guide had taught him. The queen nodded in return. "Human Tom," she said in her smooth, clear voice, "you have come far. Speak your purpose." Tom glanced at the royal interpreter standing beside her. He had practiced his speech many times. He wanted to sound respectful, confident, and hopeful for the future. "Your Majesty," he began, "I believe our peoples can join hands for the future in peace and trust." The interpreter's mouth moved quickly. Speaking in the flowing language of the Asterans, Tom waited for the queen's reply. But her eyes widened slightly, and a faint smile touched her lips. She rose from her throne and stepped forward. The room grew quiet. The queen's voice rang out across the hall. "I accept." Tom blinked. That was not the answer he expected. The courtiers around them began to whisper excitedly. Then the whispering turned into cheers. Several Asterans thumped the ground with the butts of their long ceremonial spears, making a deep drumming sound. The interpreter leaned toward Tom with a strange look on his face. "Congratulations," he said. "Congratulations. For what?" Tom asked, confused. "For your proposal. The queen accepts your offer of union." Tom's mind froze. "Wait, what proposal?" "I was talking about trade and peace." The interpreter tilted his head. "The phrase 'join hands for the future' in our tongue is only used in the context of formal bonding. Between leaders, it is the language of marriage." Tom felt the blood rush to his face. "Marriage? I wasn't." He looked at Queen Lurin, who was still smiling at him as if everything was perfectly clear. The cheers in the hall grew louder. Someone shouted, "Long live the Union!" Others joined in. Lurin stepped even closer until she stood only a short space away. "Human Tom," she said, her voice calm and steady, "this is a moment for history. Our peoples will be one through. U.S., you have chosen a bold path." Tom opened his mouth to correct her, but the weight of the room stopped him. Every pair of eyes was on him, the nobles, the guards, the servants. If he embarrassed the queen now, it could be taken as an insult. An insult in the middle of a peace meeting. Could undo everything Earth had worked for. He swallowed and forced a polite smile. "I see." The queen's smile grew warmer, as if his agreement pleased her deeply. "Then let it be known that the human representative Tom and Queen Lurin of Azera are now promised to one another. May the stars witness our vow." The sound of the hall's cheering was almost enough to shake the floor. The royal musicians began to play strange, uplifting music. The servants brought forward a banner showing the Asteran crest alongside the Earth emblem, side by side. Tom's team stood frozen behind him. Mira, his assistant, caught his eye with an expression that clearly said, "What did you just do?" He gave the smallest shake of his head, as if to say, "I have no idea." The queen gestured for him to stand beside her. Together, they faced the hall. She raised one hand, and Tom, unsure of the custom, raised his as well. The hall's cheering redoubled as the ceremony ended. The queen leaned closer and spoke in a voice only he could hear. "You have surprised me, Human Tom. Few would be so direct. I admire that." Tom gave another polite smile. but his mind was spinning. He had come here to talk about trade routes and cultural exchange, and somehow he had just become engaged to the most powerful figure on the planet when they were escorted out of the hall. Mira hurried to his side. "Tom," she whispered, "tell me you didn't just marry her." "I didn't," he whispered back. "At least, I didn't mean to." "Then why is she calling you her chosen mate?" "Because," he muttered. Apparently my speech meant something else in their language. Mira pressed her lips together to keep from laughing, though her eyes showed both amusement and concern. "You realize we can't just explain it was a mistake, right? That would be a diplomatic disaster." Tom sighed. "Yeah, I think I just became the galaxy's most accidental fiancé." They were led to a grand balcony overlooking the city. The sun was setting, painting the sky in gold and purple. From below, the people of the capital were already gathering in the streets, cheering and waving banners. The Queen stepped up beside Tom again. "Look at them," she said softly. "They believe this will bring peace. Perhaps it will." Tom stared out at the sea of celebrating Astrons. He had wanted peace too, but he had never imagined it would start like this. In that moment, with the sound of the crowd rising toward the balcony, Tom knew one thing for certain. This mission had just become far more complicated than anyone on Earth had planned. Tom barely slept that night. His quarters in the Astron Palace were grand and beautiful, but his mind would not rest. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the Queen's calm smile and heard the roar of the court cheering for their union. At sunrise, the palace servants arrived with trays of food, bright fruits that looked like glowing stones, warm bread made from grain that smelled like honey, and a tall glass of blue liquid that fizzed softly. Tom sat at the table, pushing the food around while Mira paced the floor. "This is serious," she said. "We came here to secure a trade agreement, not a wedding." "I know," Tom muttered, rubbing his face. "But if I tell them it was a misunderstanding, they might think I insulted her. An insult in a royal court. That could end any hope of peace." Mira stopped pacing. "Then you'll have to pretend, at least for now," Tom groaned. "Pretend to be engaged to an alien queen. That's not exactly a small thing to fake." Before Mira could answer, the door opened. A tall Astron guard stepped inside. His armor shimmered like polished stone, and his voice was deep and formal. "The Queen requests your presence, chosen mate." Tom froze. The title still sounded strange in his ears. Mira raised an eyebrow but said nothing. The guard led Tom through long corridors filled with carved walls showing the history of the Astron people. They passed gardens with flowers taller than a man, their petals swaying in the morning breeze. Finally, they reached a balcony where Queen Lauren stood, looking out over the city. She turned when she heard him. "Good morning, Tom. I trust you slept well." Tom hesitated. "I did not sleep much, Your Majesty." Lauren smiled faintly. "It is common for one newly promised to feel the weight of such a change. Do not be troubled. We have much to prepare." "Prepare," Tom repeated cautiously, "for the trials, of course. A royal union must be proven before the people. You will face tests of strength, wisdom, and honor. It is tradition." Tom swallowed. "And if I fail?" The Queen studied him closely. "Then the union would be dissolved. But I do not believe you will fail." Tom felt a spark of hope. Maybe this was the answer. If he failed the trials on purpose, the engagement could end without offending her. But then he saw the quiet pride in her eyes, and something in him hesitated. Before he could speak, a group of advisors approached. One of them, a short, silver-haired Astron named Torin, bowed to the Queen. "Majesty, we must announce the union to the High Council today. It will strengthen our political standing against the Dravic clans." Another advisor nodded. "The humans will gain our protection, and we will gain their alliance. This is a victory for both worlds." Tom stood quietly, hearing how much weight they already placed on this marriage. If he backed out too soon, it would not just be an insult. It could shatter delicate plans that were already in motion. The Queen turned to him. "Come, Tom, today you will meet the council as my chosen." The walk to the council chamber was shorter than Tom expected. The room was shaped like a circle, with seats rising in tiers. Dozens of Asterans filled the benches, their clothing decorated with colors and patterns that marked their clans. When the queen entered, everyone stood. Honored council, Lurin began, her voice carrying easily, I present to you Tom of Earth, who has offered a bond between our worlds. Through this union, we seal peace and friendship. The council members murmured approval. One elder with a long crest of silver hair stood. Human Tom, do you pledge loyalty to our queen and to Azera? Tom's mouth went dry. He glanced at the queen. She was watching him with that same calm, steady gaze. The entire chamber waited. Our pledge to work for peace between our peoples, he said finally. The elder nodded, satisfied. The queen smiled slightly and continued speaking about trade, cultural exchange, and the trials ahead. After the meeting, Tom was led back to his quarters. Mira was waiting there, arms crossed. Well, she asked. They just announced it to the entire council, Tom said. I'm officially her chosen mate now. Mira sighed. So what's the plan? Tom sat down heavily. She said I have to pass some trials. If I fail, the engagement ends. That might be my only way out. That's risky, Mira said. If you fail too badly, they might think you're mocking their traditions. And if you pass, well, then you're really stuck. Tom rubbed his forehead. I know. But for now, I have to keep this act going. That evening, a royal banquet was held in their honor. The great dining hall was filled with long tables covered in strange foods. Musicians played soft, rippling melodies. Nobles and clan leaders approached Tom one after another, congratulating him. A tall noble with bronze markings on his skin leaned close. You are a brave human, Tom. Few of our own would dare to stand at the queen's side. Tom forced a polite smile. I suppose I am lucky. Later, as the night grew late, the queen approached him. Tomorrow, the first trial will begin. She said, it will test your endurance. Rest well, Tom. Tom bowed slightly. I'll be ready. When he finally returned to his quarters, Mira was waiting. Endurance trial, she said. Sounds like they want to see if you can survive a challenge. Tom sank into a chair. If I'm lucky. Maybe it'll be something harmless. But deep inside, he doubted it. Something told him that tomorrow would not be easy. And as much as he wanted this engagement to end, he was beginning to wonder if he could really let the queen down, without feeling like he had betrayed more than just an agreement. That night, he lay awake again, listening to the distant sounds of the city. The cheering from the day before had faded, but the weight of expectation hung heavy in the air. Somewhere out there, the queen slept, confident that her new human mate would rise to the challenge. Tom closed his eyes, knowing that the real test was not just the trials ahead, but the choice he would have to make when they were over. The morning of the first trial came with a sky the color of pale gold. From the balcony of his quarters, Tom could see the palace courtyard filled with people. Banners and shades of blue and silver waved in the wind. The crowd was larger than he had expected, and their voices carried a restless excitement. Mira stood beside him, her arms crossed. Looks like this is going to be a public event, she said. Tom adjusted the simple ceremonial vest the queen's servants had given him. Great. Now I get to fail in front of half the city. Fail, but not too obviously. Mira reminded him, or you'll offend them. Before Tom could reply, the same tall Asteran guard from yesterday arrived. The queen awaits you, chosen mate. They followed the guard through the palace corridors until they stepped into the wide courtyard. The queen was already there, standing at the center of a large open space. She wore light armor that glimmered in the sunlight, and her expression was calm but watchful. Tom, she said when he approached, today's trial will test your endurance. In Asteran tradition, endurance is not only of the body but of the mind. You will face a journey across the Skytrack path. Tom glanced at the long stretch of stone and metal bridge that began at the far side of the courtyard and disappeared into the mist beyond the palace walls. That doesn't look so bad, he said. Lurin's smile was faint. It is not the distance that challenges most, it is what lies along the way. The royal announcer stepped forward and spoke loudly so the crowd could hear. The chosen mate will walk the Skytrack path without aid. He must carry the stone of promise from one end to the other. Only then will the trial be complete. A servant stepped forward with a smooth, round stone the size of a small melon. It was heavier than it looked when Tom took it in his hands. The Queen's voice lowered so only he could hear. "Do not give up, Tom. The path is meant to break the unworthy." The trial began with the blast of a horn. Tom stepped onto the bridge, the stone cradled in his arms. At first, the path seemed simple enough. The stone floor was wide, and the view over the city was beautiful. The crowd's cheers faded as he walked farther away from the palace. But soon the wind picked up. Pushing against him, the bridge began to slope upward, and the surface changed from smooth stone to rough, uneven metal plates. His legs started to ache from the climb. Halfway up the slope, a section of the path shifted under his feet. It was a moving platform that swayed with the wind. He had to adjust his balance while holding the heavy stone close to his chest. From the corner of his eye, he noticed shapes moving in the mist ahead. They were not people, but strange winged creatures with long tails and sharp eyes. One of them swooped close, letting out a screech. Tom ducked instinctively, nearly losing his grip on the stone. The creatures didn't attack directly, but they circled him, darting close enough to make his heart race. He realized they were part of the trial, meant to distract and scare him. Step by step, he kept moving. The slope leveled out, but the air grew warmer, and the bridge began to shake slightly. He glanced down and saw vents in the floor releasing bursts of hot steam. Timing his steps carefully, he moved between the vents, holding the stone tighter every time the steam hissed upward. His arms ached now, and sweat dripped into his eyes. He thought about dropping the stone, ending the trial, and letting the engagement dissolve. The idea was tempting, but when he imagined the Queen's calm, confident gaze, something in him resisted the thought of giving up. Finally, after what felt like hours, he saw the end of the path, a wide platform with a tall, carved pillar at its center. He took the last steps carefully, ignoring the burn in his legs and the weight in his arms. When he reached the pillar, he placed the stone of promise into a hollow at the top. The stone fit perfectly, and the pillar lit with a soft blue glow. Horns sounded again from the palace, and the crowd erupted into cheers. Tom turned to see Queen Lurin walking toward him, her light armor catching the sunlight. She stopped beside him, her expression unreadable for a moment. Then she said, "You did well." Tom gave a tired smile. "I made it to the end, at least." She tilted her head. "Many do not. You faced the wind, the shifting path, the watchers from the mist, and the fire breath of the bridge. You kept moving." He shrugged lightly. "Guess I'm stubborn." Lurin's gaze softened. "Stubbornness can be a form of strength. The people will remember what they saw today." As they walked back toward the palace, Tom could hear the crowd chanting his name. It was strange. Yesterday he had been just a confused diplomat, but now the people were cheering for him as if he belonged here. Mira met him at the palace steps, her face showing both relief and disbelief. "You didn't just finish," she said quietly. "You impressed them." "I wasn't trying to," Tom replied. "I just didn't want to drop the stone." "Yeah," Mira said with a faint smile. "But now they'll expect even more from you in the next trial." Tom glanced toward the Queen, who was speaking with her advisors a few steps away. She looked over her shoulder and gave him a small nod before turning back to her council. He didn't know if he could win every trial, but he knew one thing: walking away from this would not be as simple as he had hoped. Something about the way the Queen looked at him made it harder to think of ending the engagement. That night, as the city lights glimmered outside his window, Tom wondered what the next trial would bring. He had a feeling it would be more than just a test of skill. It might be a test of where his heart truly belonged. The day after the first trial, the palace was alive with celebration. Courtiers spoke in bright tones about Tom's victory, and servants carried trays of sweet drinks through the halls. But beneath the surface, not everyone shared the joy. Tom noticed it first during the morning meal, as he sat with Mira in the garden. Two nobles passed by speaking in low voices. When they saw him, they stopped and offered polite bows, but their eyes were cold. Mira leaned closer. "They don't all want you here," she whispered. Tom nodded slightly. "I figured. If this union changes political power, someone is bound to lose influence. That afternoon, the Queen invited Tom to walk with her in the royal gardens. Sunlight filtered through the high leaves of silver-green trees, and the air smelled of fresh water from the streams running between flower beds. "You carried the stone of promise well," Lauren said as they walked. "The people respect endurance. You showed them both patience and courage." Tom smiled faintly. "I didn't expect them to cheer so loudly. Many Asterns admire deeds over words," she replied. "You have begun to win their trust." Before Tom could answer, a faint rustling came from the bushes to their left. He slowed. Glancing at the sound, the rustling stopped, and the garden seemed still again. They walked a little farther, and the sound returned, this time sharper, like the click of metal. "Did you hear that?" Tom asked quietly. The Queen nodded. "Stay behind me." She stepped forward, her eyes scanning the bushes. Tom caught a flash of movement, a small, dark object rolling across the ground toward them. Without thinking, he grabbed Lauren's arm and pulled her back just as the object burst with a sharp hiss, releasing a cloud of thick green smoke. The smell was harsh and bitter. Tom's eyes stung, and his throat tightened. He pulled his sleeve over his mouth and helped the Queen step away from the spreading smoke. Guards came running, surrounding them and driving the smoke back with handheld wind devices. When the air cleared, one of the guards held up the remains of the object. "A poison mist capsule," he said grimly, "banned by royal decree." The Queen's expression hardened. "Someone brought it into my own garden." Tom looked at her. "That means someone inside the palace is working against you." Lauren's eyes met his, or against us both. They were escorted back inside, and the Queen called an immediate meeting with her closest advisors. Some argued it was an act by enemies outside the city. Others whispered that the attack could only have come from within. Torin, the silver-haired advisor, stepped forward. "Majesty, if this union is to be accepted, the trials must continue. But your safety must come first. The chosen mate should be guarded closely." Lauren agreed, and from that moment, Tom found himself shadowed by 2 armed guards wherever he went later. In the privacy of his quarters, Mira confronted him. "This is exactly what I was worried about. You're in the middle of their politics now, and someone wants you gone." Tom sat down heavily. "I know. But if the attack was meant to end the engagement, it didn't work. If anything, it made Lauren more determined." Mira shook her head. "You could use this to step away. Say it's too dangerous. No one would blame you." Tom thought about it, but then he remembered the moment in the garden. The way Lauren had trusted him without hesitation when he pulled her back from the smoke. He couldn't just leave after that evening. The Queen asked to see him alone. In the council chamber, the room was quiet except for the sound of water running through a small fountain in the corner. "You could leave," she said, as if reading his thoughts. "No one on your world would fault you for ending this. But I will not hide the truth. There are those who fear what our bond could mean. They will try again." Tom looked at her steadily. "If they want to scare me off, it won't work. I'm staying." Her gaze softened, though her voice remained steady. "Then we must be ready. Tomorrow is the trial of wisdom. It will not be as dangerous as the Skytrack path, but it will be watched closely. Some may try to make you fail through deceit rather than strength." "I'll be ready," he said. The next day, the trial of wisdom was held in the Hall of Mirrors, a vast chamber with polished walls that reflected everything like rippling water. At the center stood 3 tall pillars, each holding a sealed container. The challenge was to choose the one containing the heart of the ancients, a symbolic object representing truth and justice. Asteran scholars surrounded the hall, watching every movement. Some offered advice, while others gave misleading clues. Tom listened carefully, but he noticed something odd. 2 of the advisors kept subtly gesturing toward one particular pillar. He studied their faces. They were the same nobles Mira had warned him about the day before. Instead of choosing the pillar they suggested, Tom examined each container himself. He noticed faint markings on one, markings similar to those carved into the stone of promise. From the first trial, he trusted his own observation and chose that one. When the container opened, the heart of the ancients, A small crystal sphere glowing with soft light was inside. The crowd murmured in surprise, and the queen's lips curved into a quiet smile after the ceremony. Lauren stepped beside him. You trusted your eyes over the words of those who wished to mislead you. That is the mark of wisdom. Tom glanced at the two nobles in the crowd. They looked displeased, whispering to each other before slipping away. He didn't know what they would try next. But he knew one thing. The games in this palace were becoming more dangerous by the day. As the sun set, Tom stood on the balcony, feeling the cool evening breeze. He could still smell faint traces of the garden's flowers in the air, somewhere behind him. The queen's footsteps approached. You understand now, she said quietly, that these trials are not only for the people's eyes, they are also for the ones in the shadows. Tom nodded. And I have a feeling they won't stop until one of us is gone. She looked out over the city with him. Then we will have to make sure it is not us. In that moment, Tom realized this was no longer about finding a polite way to end the engagement. It was about survival, and the survival of the alliance both of them were now risking everything to protect. The council chamber was silent after Mira's bold declaration in the previous meeting. Her voice still echoed in many minds. She had spoken for peace and alliance. But peace was not something that came without proof. The alien queen, Solara, rose from her throne and studied Mira with calm but intense eyes. You speak as if you are ready to share our future, Solara said. But words are wind. We need to know if a human's loyalty can survive fire. The council shifted uncomfortably. Everyone knew what the queen meant. There was an old trial among her people, the trial of shadows. It was not about fighting, but about facing danger and temptation that could turn a person against their allies. Mira stood tall. Name the test, and I will take it. Solara gave a slow nod. You will go into the shadow cavern. There is an old device there, guarded by our sentinels. Many have tried to reach it, few return. You must bring it to me before the next moonrise. Fail, and our alliance ends before it begins. Gasps ran through the hall. The shadow cavern was feared even among the queen's warriors. It was not the creatures inside that scared people the most, but the illusions the place created, illusions that could break the will. Tomas stepped forward from the human side. She will not go alone. I will join her. Solara's eyes narrowed slightly. Tomei enter. But only one must carry the device. If one fails, both fail. Are you prepared for that, human? Tomas met her gaze. Yes, by the time the sun had set, Mira and Tomas were at the mouth of the shadow cavern. The air was heavy, and a faint humming seemed to come from deep inside. The entrance was a jagged opening in the rock, with dark vines hanging like curtains. The tall alien guards, their armor black and green, stepped aside without a word. The first steps into the cavern felt colder than expected. The ground was smooth, almost as smooth as if something had worn it down for centuries. They followed a narrow tunnel until it opened into a wide chamber, lit only by faint crystals in the walls. Then the shadows began to move. At first, Mira thought it was only her, eyes adjusting, but the shapes in the darkness shifted and stretched. One took the form of a human soldier she once knew, someone who had betrayed her trust in the past. He smiled and whispered, You can't trust them, Mira. They will use you and leave you. She took a step back, but Tomas grabbed her arm. It's not real, he said firmly. Keep moving. They pressed on, but the illusions grew stronger. Now Mira saw her family back on Earth, calling her home. She felt a deep pull, a longing to leave this dangerous place and return to safety. Tomas was struggling too. He saw his old commander, telling him the aliens had no honor and would break any deal. His steps slowed. Mira stopped and faced him. Tomas, this is what they warned us about. The shadows are lies. We cannot listen. Her voice cut through the haze in his mind. He shook his head and forced himself forward. The path narrowed into a twisting corridor. Strange clicking sounds echoed around them, and soon they found the first sentinel, a tall, insect-like figure made of metal and bone. Its eyes glowed faintly, and its long claws scraped against the floor. Without speaking, it charged. Mira ducked under its swipe, while Tomas grabbed a piece of fallen crystal and swung hard. The blow cracked part of the sentinel's armor, but it kept moving. Mira spotted a weak joint near its chest and drove her blade into it. The machine let out a high, sharp sound and collapsed. They moved on, their breathing heavy, knowing more. Sentinels could be a head dot at last. After what felt like hours, they reached a small circular chamber. In the center stood a pedestal with the device, a smooth, black sphere covered in faint markings. Mira stepped forward, but the ground trembled. The shadows gathered again, this time forming a towering figure of pure darkness. It spoke in a voice that seemed to come from inside their heads. Take the device, and you take the burden of truth. Leave it, and you may live in comfort. Mira's hand shook, but she reached for the sphere. The shadow lunged at her, but Tomas leapt between them, holding his weapon high. The impact threw him back, yet it gave Mira enough time to grab the sphere. The darkness screamed and dissolved into the walls. The humming in the cavern stopped. They left the shadow cavern as the first light of the moon touched the horizon. Back in the council hall, Mira placed the sphere at Solara's feet. Your test is complete. Solara smiled, slow and genuine. Then you are no longer a guest. Mira of Earth, you are now part of our future. But even as applause filled the hall, Mira noticed something strange, a faint vibration from the sphere in the queen's hands, as if it were awake. The real challenge, she realized, might be just beginning. The great hall of the alien palace was filled with light from crystal towers that reached to the ceiling. The air was warm, carrying the scent of sweet blossoms from the queen's private gardens. Rian stood in the center of the hall, his boots planted firmly on the polished floor. The place seemed quieter than usual, as if the walls themselves were waiting to hear what would happen next. Queen Sarala entered slowly from the far end, wearing her ceremonial robes of deep blue and silver. Her crown shimmered faintly under the glow of the crystals. She walked with a grace that made even the palace guards shift in awe. Her golden eyes stayed locked on Rian as she moved closer. Human, she said softly, but her voice carried across the hall. We stand on the edge of something that will change both our worlds. Rian nodded. I know, but the risk is worth it. The alliance will hold only if both sides trust each other completely. Sarala's gaze deepened. You speak of trust, yet I wonder if you understand what my people expect from such a promise. I understand more than you think, Rian replied. Trust is not just about words. It's about what we choose to do when it matters most. The queen studied him for a long moment, as if searching for any doubt in his face. The council believes your offer of unity is a clever, human tactic. They fear you wish to gain favor with me only to take advantage of our resources. Rian gave a faint smile. If I wanted that, I wouldn't have risked my life for your soldiers on the battlefield. Last month, Sarala's eyes softened for a brief second. That is true, and it is why I am willing to take this step. She paused, then took a slow breath. But this step will not be small. In my culture, the strongest alliance is sealed not with a signature or a treaty, but with a bond that cannot be broken. Rian tilted his head. A bond, a union, she said, between leaders, between those who would stand as one before their people. The meaning of her words settled heavily in the air. Rian realized she was speaking of more than politics. This was personal. This was commitment. You mean marriage? Rian said quietly. Sarala nodded. Yes. Our traditions demand that if a queen accepts such a union, it is for life. There is no parting, no betrayal. It means the people of both worlds become one. For a moment, Rian didn't speak. He thought about the long journey that had brought him here. The battles, the mistrust, the moments where they had stood back to back against danger. He thought of the way Sarala had risked her own life to protect him when the palace was attacked. Finally, he said, if that's what it takes for our people to stand together, then I will do it. Not because it's the only way, but because I believe in it. The queen's eyes widened slightly. Then a small, almost shy smile touched her lips. Then it is decided. But our customs demand that the vow be spoken under the open sky, before the stars, so that the heavens themselves bear witness. Later that night, they stood on the balcony of the palace. The wind was cool, carrying the faint hum of the city below. Above them, The sky stretched endlessly, filled with stars that seemed brighter than Rian had ever seen. Sarala stepped forward, her robe trailing softly behind her. She raised her hands and spoke in the flowing, melodic language of her people. The words seemed to dance in the air like light. When she finished, she turned to Rian. "Now you must speak." Rian didn't know her language well enough to say the vow perfectly, so he spoke in his own. "I promise to stand with you, no matter the storm. I promise to guard your people as my own, and to trust you as I trust my own heart. I will not turn away from you, and I will not let the bond we make tonight be broken." The queen's eyes glimmered in the starlight. Then the vow is sealed. From somewhere above the palace, a sudden burst of light appeared in the sky, like a shooting star. The guards bowed deeply, and even the wind seemed to still for a moment. But as they stood together, a messenger hurried onto the balcony, his voice urgent. "Your Majesties," he said, looking between them, "there has been an attack on the eastern border. Unknown ships have entered our space." Rian and Sarala exchanged a look. The vow had been made, but the test of their unity had already begun. Sarala turned toward the horizon, her voice firm. "Then we go to meet them together." Rian felt a strange mix of calm and determination settle in him. This was no longer just her fight or his fight. It was theirs, and whatever came next, the stars themselves had heard their promise. The great hall of the alien palace was silent. Outside, the skies above the capital were filled with bright lights from hundreds of ships. Some were human, some alien, but all were gathered for one reason: to witness what would happen between the alien queen and the human visitor named Samir. Samir stood in the center of the hall. His clothes were simple, but his heart was steady. He had faced dangers, misunderstandings, and strange customs since he arrived on this planet. Now, it seemed everything came down to this moment. The alien queen, Arya, walked down the long golden steps. She wore a crown shaped like shining leaves, and her long robe moved like flowing water. Her people lined the walls of the hall, their faces filled with curiosity and expectation. Arya stopped before him. Her voice was calm, yet it carried enough strength to fill the hall. "Samir," she said, "in our world, words have power. When you spoke before, you offered something that to my people is the greatest bond marriage. I accepted in front of my council. Our laws now expect us to unite." Samir remembered the moment clearly. He had been trying to protect her from an attack, and in a burst of courage, he had made a promise that sounded like a proposal. He had not known it carried such deep meaning here. "I didn't understand your custom," he said, speaking slowly so his words were clear. "But I meant my promise to protect you. If being by your side is what it takes to keep peace between our people, I will do it." A ripple of whispers moved through the alien court. Many of Arya's advisors looked at each other with surprise. Some seemed pleased, others uncertain. Arya studied him for a moment, her eyes sharp but not unkind. "You speak like a leader, Samir," she said. "But marriage here is not only a promise between two hearts, it is also a union between two nations. Are you ready for that weight?" Samir thought about his home on Earth, about the countless arguments between governments, about how easily trust could be broken. He thought about the journey that had brought him here, the people he had met, and the dangers they had faced together. "Yes," he said, "because peace is worth it, and I believe you want peace too." The queen's lips curved into a small smile. "You have courage, human. That is why I accepted you. But there is one last test before this union can be sealed." She raised her hand, and two guards stepped forward, holding a small silver bowl. Inside was a glowing liquid that shimmered like starlight. "This," she said, "is the water of Oz. Both must drink from it. It binds truth and reveals any hidden intention. If your heart is false, the water will reject you." Samir looked into the bowl. The liquid seemed alive, moving in gentle swirls. He felt no fear, only a steady calm. He lifted the bowl, took a sip, and swallowed. It was cool, almost sweet, and left a strange warmth in his chest. The queen took the bowl next and drank. The liquid glowed brighter for a moment, then faded. The hall remained silent, waiting for a sign. A soft chime filled the air. coming from the bowl itself. Arya's eyes softened. "The water accepts us," she announced. The court erupted in cheers. Banners were unfurled, music began to play, and the air was filled with the scent of flowers that floated down from the balconies. Samir could hardly believe it. A few weeks ago, he had been a traveler lost on an alien world. Now, he stood beside a queen, not just as her ally, but as her partner in a new future. Later that night, after the celebrations began, Arya and Samir stood on the high balcony overlooking the city. Ships passed in the distance, their lights glimmering like stars. "You know," Arya said quietly, "many thought I would never join with anyone outside my own people. But you showed me something different, that trust can be built, even between worlds." Samir smiled. "And you showed me that sometimes a promise made in the heat of the moment can change everything for the better." They stood in silence for a moment, watching the lights. In that stillness, there was no doubt that their choice would be remembered by both humans and aliens for generations. It was not the end of their story, but the beginning of a new chapter, one where peace had a real chance, born from a single unexpected offer and an even more unexpected acceptance.